is 1-3, properties of numbers. The essential question is, what can you use to help you remember the commutative, associative, and distributive properties? To start out our notes, we have examples of all three of these properties. The commutative property is a property for addition and multiplication that says that if you change the order of two things that you are adding or two things that you are multiplying, it does not give you a different result. So 2 plus 5 is the same as 5 plus 2. 7 is equal to 7. 7 times 4 is the same as 4 times 7. They're both equal to 28. And using variables, x times y is the exact same as y times x. So the commutative property says that you can change the order when you're adding or multiplying and still get the same result. I like to think of the commutative property with the first two letters being CO, and that the CO would represent change order. Change order. Another way to think about it is commutative is kind of like communicating, and if you communicate with someone, it means that you talk to them and they talk to you. So you might think about that. Communication goes both ways. The second property is the associative property. The associative property involves not just two numbers or variables, but three of them. And what you may notice is that the order is not changing. What is changing instead is the way that they are grouped. So this property is again for addition or for multiplication. So if you are adding three numbers or multiplying three numbers, the grouping symbol, which would represent what you add first or what you multiply first, can change, and it doesn't change the result. So if you think about the first example, in the parentheses you see 5 plus 6, that would be 11, plus 4 is 15. On the other side, the parentheses are around 4 plus 5, which is 9. 9 plus 6 is still 15. The same thing is true for multiplication. 8 times 3 is 24, times 2 is 48, or 2 times 8 is 16, times 3 is still 48. And the last example shows you addition, but using variables instead. So the associative property. What helps me remember the associative property is that you are changing, you're not changing the order, but you change the group, the grouping symbol. I think about when you're in middle school, who you associate with is like who you hang out with in your group of friends, So we're saying that the order is not moving, the parentheses here are moving. So I think about it like this number 5 right here was hanging out with number 6, but then over here they changed their mind and instead they're hanging out with number 4 first. So they changed their group. So inside of the grouping symbols, they change the group, not the order. The last property is the distributive property. The distributive property is when you distribute multiplication, which means you hand it out. You distribute it. So this 5 right here is being distributed. It's next to the parentheses, which we know means multiplication. So you're going to multiply it times everything inside. 5 times x plus 5 times 3. 7 times 3 minus 7 times 8. So you see the minus stays. So you multiply the number outside times everything on the inside. A lot of times we talk about distributing and we say bomb it. It's like you're bombing everything. So it's kind of like these little arcs that we draw are like bombs, like you throw the bomb. Or football, you throw a pass to a couple different receivers. So distribute to everything in your parentheses. These three properties right here, these are the three most important properties when we look at our 8th grade benchmarks and standards. You absolutely have to be able to keep them straight. If you're given an example, it might ask you which property is this an example of. It could more than likely be a multiple choice question where they give you a bunch of choices and you have to choose the one that represents a certain property. Or it could even be a multiple response where you choose all of the ones that would represent one of the properties. So these are the 3 properties that we really want you to remember. Okay, next we have a click and drag. So in the class we have individual students come up and volunteer to click and drag. I will do this for you. The first one I noticed, 12 plus 3 equals 3 plus 12. The order changed, so that's the commutative property. The second one, I noticed that the order ABC did not change. So it's not commutative. This one is associative because the parentheses, the group that you associate with, that's what moved. Same on this next one. The parentheses moved. Next one, the order changed again. Now we've got some distributing on this one because what you notice is with the distributive property, you've got one set of parentheses on the left side here, but then 2 sets of parentheses to show that the 2 got multiplied by the 4 and the 7. All right, next one, the order is changing again. So that's going to be my associative property. Or sorry, not the order is changing. The parentheses, the grouping symbol's changing. The order changes on this blue one to finish out my commutative property. And then 2 more where we are distributing. And this one has a little error. This should be a plus right here. So I'll fix that. And then group it so I can drag it over. There we go. So the distributive property, you're bombing, you're distributing. The associative property, the parentheses are moving. So on each of these, the parentheses moved. So it's around 2 of them, and then it moved around different ones, and then commutative, the order changes. All right, here's a summary. We'd like you to think about what we talked about to help you remember the properties. So you should write a sentence for each one of these in your summary, a complete sentence for each one. So we started each sentence for you. You need to finish it. And then our homework, we have a worksheet that's multiple choice. So that's your homework. And during class time, we're working on this versatile that's called commuting and associating. So homework is just the worksheet. That's the end of our lesson 1-3.